Most people live their entire lives believing that wealth depends on luck, on chance, timing, fate, or some invisible hand that decides who gets prosperity and who doesn't. I used to think that too. But the day I discovered that Jewish wisdom teaches something radically different, it felt like a quiet shock tearing through everything I believed. According to the ancient sages, wealth is not random. It is not accidental. It is governed by a spiritual law as real and predictable as gravity. And once you understand that law, wealth stops feeling mysterious and starts feeling inevitable. But here is the unsettling part. The reason most people never access this law is not because they're unworthy, unlucky, or incapable. It's because they unknowingly break the law every single day with their words, their assumptions, and their emotional posture toward life. Wealth doesn't avoid them. They repel it. It took me years to realize that I wasn't poor because life was against me. I was poor because my beliefs were. This is why I want to ask you something before we go deeper. Scroll down and comment one sentence you often say about money or success. It might be something small. Money is hard. I'm always broke. I hope things get better. Or even, I'm not the lucky type. Whatever it is, write it. Because naming a belief makes it visible, and once something is visible, you finally have the power to change it. When you reveal your internal script publicly, even in a simple comment, you interrupt the pattern that has been operating in the dark. Jewish wisdom teaches that the spiritual world responds to your declarations, not your intentions. Your words shape your reality long before your actions ever do. That's why two people with the same skills and the same opportunities can live completely different financial lives, one aligned with the spiritual law, the other unknowingly fighting against it. And it's also why wealth often flows to people who don't seem particularly exceptional, while bypassing those who work tirelessly, but speak against themselves. My great-grandfather used to say that God created the world with speech, so we would understand that words build universes. When he first told me this, I thought it was poetic metaphor. But the older I became, the more I saw its truth unfolding in the lives around me. People who spoke possibility found possibility. People who spoke limitation found limitation. Speech wasn't describing life, it was designing it. And when I finally discovered the spiritual law behind prosperity, something inside me shifted. It was as if I had been walking through my own life blindfolded, feeling around for opportunities that were always just out of reach. The moment I understood the law, the blindfold slipped. Patterns became clear. Obstacles I once thought were fate revealed themselves as habits. But there is one fundamental misunderstanding, one ancient mistake that blocks almost everyone from accessing this law. And until you see it for yourself, prosperity will continue to feel like luck, even though it isn't. The moment you begin to question whether wealth is truly random, something subtle awakens inside you, almost like a quiet internal shift, the kind that feels more like remembering than learning. Jewish wisdom teaches that prosperity does not follow luck, it follows alignment. Just as a seed grows in the presence of water, light, and fertile soil, wealth emerges naturally when a person aligns their inner world with the spiritual laws that govern abundance. And once I understood this, the confusing chaos of my financial life suddenly took on a pattern, one that had been there all along, waiting for me to finally see it. At the core of this ancient understanding lies a simple belief: abundance is a flow. It is not something you chase down, it is something you become receptive to. That receptivity is shaped by your clarity, your intention, and your ability to stay open to increase. In Jewish tradition, prosperity is not viewed as a stroke of fortune, but as a form of divine partnership. You move and life moves with you. You speak, and the world rearranges itself in response. You align, and pathways begin to appear where there were none. This is why two people with the same opportunities can experience completely different outcomes. One aligned, one misaligned, one open, one blocked, one speaking growth, one speaking self-sabotage. The spiritual law responds not to effort alone, but to resonance. Wealth flows where the frequency is clear. My great-grandfather used to describe it using a metaphor so simple that, for years, I underestimated its brilliance. He would hold a cup under a faucet and say, "Notice the water doesn't chase the cup. It falls effortlessly." All the cup has to do is stay open. When I finally understood what he meant, something in me softened. Prosperity wasn't complicated. It wasn't about deserving or proving or forcing. It was about openness, alignment, positioning yourself under the natural flow instead of standing off to the side hoping drops might reach you. But if the spiritual law of wealth is so natural, so clear, so woven into the fabric of reality, then why do so many people struggle? Why do so many live with a sense of financial heaviness, uncertainty, or fear? Why does abundance feel distant when it is meant to be inherent? The answer, according to the sages, is shockingly simple. Most people carry a belief that directly contradicts the spiritual law, but they don't even realize they hold it. A belief taught silently through culture, family, and experience. A belief so common that people wear it as a badge of honor, never seeing how deeply it closes the cup that was meant to stay open. And until this belief is exposed, understood, and released, the spiritual law cannot operate fully in your life. It becomes blocked, tangled, unable to flow the way it was designed to. The truth behind this first great misunderstanding is unsettling, but once you see it, everything about wealth and struggle begins to make sense in a way you never expected. The first great misunderstanding is so deeply woven into our culture that most people defend it without ever realizing how much it costs them. It is the belief that wealth must be earned through pain, that suffering is somehow noble, that hardship is a badge of honor, that the more you struggle, the more deserving you become. I once believed this myself. I thought that exhaustion was proof of effort, that stress was a sign of dedication, that difficulty meant I was on the right path. But Jewish wisdom reveals something radically different. Pain is not the price of prosperity. Alignment is. This belief begins subtly. You hear adults say, life isn't supposed to be easy, or if it was simple, everyone would do it, or you have to struggle to succeed. These phrases sink into your subconscious long before you even question them. Over time, they create an identity. A person who expects difficulty, seeks it, even chooses it unconsciously because ease feels suspicious. And when ease feels suspicious, abundance feels suspicious too. I once knew a man who lived trapped inside this belief. He took pride in how hard his life was. He bragged about long hours, sleepless nights, constant sacrifice. He believed he was doing something noble by suffering. But what he didn't see was that his suffering closed him. It drained his creativity, clouded his intuition, and made him blind to opportunities. He wasn't working hard. He was working misaligned. And misaligned effort doesn't attract wealth. It repels it. Jewish wisdom teaches that suffering can refine you, but it was never meant to define you. Temporary challenges build resilience, but chronic struggle builds walls that block the spiritual law that governs abundance. When you glorify pain, you unconsciously send a message to life. I only accept blessings that come with struggle. And life, obedient to your belief, complies. Even worse, believing that wealth must be earned through pain creates a contradiction inside you. Part of you wants prosperity, but another part of you believes prosperity requires suffering. So your inner world pulls in two directions. You desire wealth, but you fear ease. You want abundance, but you reject anything that doesn't arrive through hardship. This internal conflict is one of the most powerful forms of self-sabotage. And here is the painful irony. Many people who cling to struggle believe they are being humble. They think rejecting ease makes them morally superior or spiritually pure. But humility is not choosing difficulty. Humility is accepting alignment. Humility is allowing life to bless you without feeling the need to earn every blessing through suffering. Once you see this, the illusion breaks. The doorway opens, and a deeper question emerges. If suffering is not the path to wealth, then what is? What actually activates the spiritual law that abundance follows? The answer leads directly into the next revelation, one that exposes an even subtler form of misalignment, hidden not in your beliefs about pain, but in the direction of your effort itself. As soon as you release the belief that suffering is a requirement for wealth, another layer of clarity begins to take shape, one that reveals why so many hardworking people stay stuck, even when their intentions are pure. Jewish wisdom teaches that abundance does not respond to effort alone, It responds to aligned effort. This is where the Talmud introduces a principle most people overlook. There is a sacred difference between meaningful struggle and unnecessary strain. One creates expansion. The other creates exhaustion. My great-grandfather taught me this lesson with a simple demonstration I never forgot. He stood beside a closed wooden door and said, "Push." I pushed with all my strength. The door did not move, he said. "Harder." I pushed again, my muscles tightening, my breath growing heavy, but the door stayed still. Then he gently whispered, "Now pull." I pulled lightly, and the door swung open without resistance. He smiled and said, "Pain is what happens when you apply effort in the wrong direction." That moment revealed something essential. Misalignment feels like struggle. Alignment feels like flow. And this difference has nothing to do with how capable you are. It has everything to do with how attuned you are. When your actions contradict your inner truth, life becomes heavy. When your actions align with your purpose, life begins to respond. Think of all the ways people unknowingly push when they should be pulling. They stay in environments that drain them because they're afraid to leave. They chase opportunities that aren't meant for them while ignoring the ones quietly aligned with their gifts. They speak negatively about their future, then wonder why hope feels far away. They force outcomes instead of listening for the subtle signs that guide the right direction. Jewish wisdom calls this Yagaya Shel Hevel, empty effort. Effort with no spiritual root. Effort disconnected from purpose. The kind of effort that tires you but never lifts you. And the danger of empty effort is that it can trick you into believing prosperity is supposed to feel hard, when in truth, the difficulty you feel is simply misalignment. Aligned effort, on the other hand, carries a different energy. It doesn't mean things are effortless, but it means the effort feels meaningful. It feels guided. You feel supported rather than drained. Doors open with less force. Ideas come more naturally. You sense the right timing rather than fighting against it. So ask yourself, where in your life do you feel that unmistakable sensation of pushing a locked door? Where do you feel resistance that hasn't changed no matter how hard you've tried? Those places are invitations, not to work harder, but to realign. Because once you recognize misalignment, the next sabotage becomes impossible to ignore. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. In fact, it feels strangely logical, yet it quietly weakens the spiritual law more than any amount of hard work ever could. The deeper you look into the nature of misalignment, the clearer it becomes that not all effort leads to abundance. In fact, one of the most deceptive forms of misalignment is the instinct to chase wealth. At first glance, chasing seems logical, even admirable. You run after opportunities, push harder, move faster. You convince yourself that momentum equals progress. But Jewish wisdom reveals a subtle truth. Chasing is not a sign of strength. It is a declaration of lack. When you chase something, you are telling the universe, "This is far from me. This is not naturally mine. I must pursue it because it does not belong in my orbit." And the spiritual law responds accordingly. That distance you feel becomes real. The harder you run, the further the goal seems to drift. It becomes like trying to catch your reflection in water. The more you reach for it, the more it separates from you. I knew someone who lived their entire life in chase mode. They changed careers constantly, jumped from plan to plan, rushed into investments and burned themselves out trying to strike while the iron was hot. But the truth was, the iron never stayed hot long enough for anything to stabilize. Their energy was frantic, scattered, restless. And life mirrored that energy back. Unstable income, inconsistent opportunities, fleeting success. Jewish teachings explain that the spiritual law of abundance responds to magnetism, not desperation. When you are aligned, you draw things toward you. The right people, the right timing, the right ideas. They begin to appear with a sense of quiet inevitability. But when you chase, you disrupt that magnetic field. You begin to act from fear. Fear that opportunities are scarce. Fear that others will take what is meant for you. Fear that you must fight for every inch of progress. Psychology echoes this ancient truth. When your brain perceives a goal as distant or difficult, It activates survival mode. Survival mode narrows your awareness, increases anxiety, and limits creativity. You miss subtle opportunities because your mind is too busy scanning for threats or obstacles. In that state, chasing becomes exhausting and unproductive. The paradox is striking. The more you chase, the less you attract. The more you fear losing, the more life reflects that loss. The more you insist wealth is out there, the more you confirm it is not within reach. But magnetism begins the moment you shift your internal posture, from grasping to receiving, from forcing to allowing, from scarcity to certainty. Wealth flows where confidence flows, and this insight leads us directly to the next and most subtle sabotage of all. Because even if you stop chasing and begin to align, there is one habit that quietly cancels all progress. One pattern of speech so common and so destructive that it can deactivate the spiritual law instantly. If there is one sabotage more destructive than misalignment or chasing, it is the quietest one, the one that hides in your everyday language, disguised as honesty or realism. Jewish wisdom teaches that words are not passive sounds, they are creative tools. They instruct reality. They set spiritual laws into motion. And that is why the most dangerous block to prosperity is speaking against your own future, not through dramatic declarations, but through subtle, repeated phrases you barely notice leaving your mouth. I used to underestimate this completely. I thought words were just emotional expressions, harmless slips of the tongue. But then I began listening, really listening, to the phrases that had been shaping my life for years. Money doesn't stick. I'm terrible with finances. Nothing ever works out for me. I'm always unlucky. Each time I said one of those sentences, I felt a small sting of truth, as if I were describing my reality. But in truth, I was creating it. Jewish tradition calls this koach hadibur, the power of speech. According to the sages, words don't follow reality, they lead it. When God created the world, He didn't build it, He spoke it. And because we carry a spark of that creative capacity, our words shape the structure of our own world, one phrase at a time. Behavioral studies from Israel echo this ancient teaching. Researchers found that individuals who consistently express pessimistic beliefs about money experience measurable declines in financial progress, not because they are cursed, but because negative speech alters decision-making. It weakens confidence. It narrows choices. It makes risk feel dangerous and possibilities feel unrealistic. The words you repeat become the instructions your brain follows. I once helped a woman who always described herself as bad with money. She said it lightly, almost jokingly, as if it were part of her personality. But that phrase shaped every financial decision she made. It made her avoid opportunities, postpone learning, and overcompensate with fear. That simple sentence, innocent on the surface, had become a prophecy she kept fulfilling. And here is the spiritual danger. Every time you speak limitation, you reinforce it. Every time you declare shortage, you anchor it. Every time you identify as unlucky, you align with a future that mirrors that belief. The law of abundance cannot operate fully in a life where the mouth contradicts the soul. But here is the hope, the turning point in this entire journey. If harmful speech can block wealth, then conscious speech can unlock it. The same creative power that once closed doors can open them. The same voice that once held you back can set you free. Because once you understand how your words shape the spiritual law that governs prosperity, you are finally ready for the revelation that changes everything. A formula older than any modern self-help method, a formula designed to activate abundance with an elegance so simple it almost seems impossible. Once you finally see how your own words have been shaping your reality, something inside you becomes ready in a way it has never been before. Jewish wisdom teaches that awareness opens the vessel, and once the vessel is open, it can finally receive. That is why the ancient sages did not stop at warning against destructive speech. They offered a formula to replace it. A formula so simple, so elegant, that most people overlook its power the first time they hear it. But simplicity does not weaken truth, it sharpens it. And this formula, carried quietly through generations, was designed to activate the spiritual law behind prosperity almost instantly. My great-grandfather called it the three-word gate because he said these three currents, gratitude, action, and expectation, unlock everything the soul has been holding back. Before revealing the words themselves, he made me understand the structure behind them. Abundance, he said, requires three movements: receiving, moving, and expanding. If even one is missing, the flow breaks. The first movement is gratitude, not the polite kind, but the deep spiritual recognition that you already stand in the presence of blessing. Gratitude is the signal of readiness. It tells the spiritual world, I see what I have, I acknowledge it, I am open to more. In Jewish tradition, gratitude is the frequency of expansion. Without it, the vessel remains closed. The second movement is aligned action, not frantic effort or chasing illusions, but intentional steps taken in harmony with who you are becoming. Aligned action is what tells the spiritual law that you are participating in your own prosperity. It bridges desire with embodiment. It turns possibility into momentum. The third movement is expectant growth. This is the one most people miss. Expectation is not arrogance, it is spiritual orientation. It is the quiet certainty that increases your natural trajectory, not a lucky accident. Expectation keeps the vessel open. It keeps your hands unclenched. It keeps your spirit aligned with the laws of abundance rather than the fears of scarcity. And when these three movements merge, they take on the form of a simple spoken formula. Thank God, I am growing. These words are not poetic, they are architectural. Thank God aligns you with gratitude. I am grounds you in identity and intention. Growing keeps the spiritual vessel open to expansion. I remember the first morning I whispered this phrase. It felt almost too soft to matter. But by the end of the week, something inside me had shifted. My decisions felt clearer, my energy steadier, my intuition sharper. It was as if the world had softened its edges and begun to meet me halfway. To anchor this formula, I created a simple ritual, an alarm each morning at 9. When it rang, I said the words aloud, not as affirmation, but as alignment, as participation in the spiritual law itself. And once the formula settled into my life, I began to witness something extraordinary. Real people, in real situations, experiencing real change. Not because luck improved, but because alignment did. After I began practicing the three-word formula, I expected internal shifts, clarity, calm, a renewed sense of direction. But what I didn't expect was how quickly I would begin seeing the same transformation in others. It was as if the moment I understood the spiritual law behind prosperity, my eyes were suddenly trained to notice its patterns everywhere. And the story that impacted me most came from a man I'll call Elias, someone who had spent years believing he was destined to live on the edge of almost succeeding, almost stable, almost confident, almost hopeful. Elias carried a heaviness that didn't show on his face but lived in the way he spoke. His sentences were filled with quiet resignation. Nothing ever turns out right for me. I don't expect much. Good things don't last. Each phrase felt small, but together they built a world that kept him trapped in circles he didn't know how to escape. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't unskilled. He wasn't unlucky. He was misaligned with the spiritual law that governs prosperity. When he first heard the formula, "Thank God I am growing," he dismissed it. He laughed in that tired way people do when hope feels too risky. But after a particularly difficult week, he promised himself 7 days of trying it. 7 days of repeating it, morning and night without expectation. By day 3, something subtle shifted. He told me he felt lighter, but not in a way I can explain. By day 5, he said he woke up with ideas. Small ideas, but the kind that come with a spark instead of dread. By day 7, he noticed something that startled him. He wasn't speaking the way he used to. The phrases of resignation had begun disappearing from his vocabulary, not because he forced them out, but because they no longer felt true. And when the speech shifted, the world responded. Within a month, the side project he'd abandoned came back to life. A friend reached out with an opportunity he had never considered. A client who had previously overlooked him suddenly took interest. He didn't chase these things. They came naturally, almost effortlessly, as if prosperity had been standing at his door the whole time, waiting for the signal to enter. The greatest change wasn't external, though. It happened in the way he carried himself. His decisions became bolder, his posture more confident, his intuition clearer. He began to trust the idea that he was in movement, not stagnation, that life was expanding, not closing. And here is what struck me. Not once did he say, "I got lucky." He knew, instinctively, that luck had nothing to do with it. He had aligned with a spiritual law, and the law responded the way it always does. Predictably, consistently, faithfully. Elias's transformation reminded me that the spiritual law is universal. It does not check background, identity, or circumstance. It responds to alignment, and alignment alone. And once you understand this, the path to sustained prosperity becomes clear, almost illuminated, leading into the deeper framework that Jewish wisdom has preserved for generations. As I watched Elias's life shift with such clarity and consistency, I began to understand what my great-grandfather had been trying to teach me for years. Prosperity is not a moment. It is a structure, a sequence, a spiritual architecture that unfolds the same way every time someone aligns with it. Jewish wisdom doesn't treat abundance as a mystery. It treats it as a system, one that begins in the invisible and then materializes in the visible. And once you learn this sequence, wealth stops feeling unpredictable and starts feeling almost inevitable. The sequence is simple, but not simplistic. Words, intention, alignment, manifestation. Every part depends on the one before it. When your words shift, your intention shifts. When your intention shifts, your alignment shifts. And when your alignment shifts, manifestation becomes the natural result of spiritual law, not the exception. It is the same pattern written into the creation story. God spoke, intention formed, order aligned, reality appeared. The blueprint is ancient, but it continues to operate in human lives every single day. This is why prosperity becomes unstable for some people. They change their actions without changing their words. They change their routine without changing their intention. They change their effort while still carrying beliefs that contradict abundance. That is like trying to build a house on top of sand. The structure may rise, but it cannot stand. Sustained prosperity comes from reinforcing every part of the sequence. You speak growth, so your intention strengthens. You reinforce intention, so alignment tightens. You protect alignment, so manifestation remains constant. This is not superstition, it is spiritual engineering. To help people anchor this process, the sages often recommended a 7-day reset. Not a challenge for discipline, but a realignment ritual. For 7 days, you become hyper-aware of the words you speak. You replace every phrase of limitation, "I can't, I never, money is hard," with words that match the spiritual law. "I am growing, I am expanding, I am moving forward." For 7 days, your speech becomes architectural, purposeful, conscious. During those same 7 days, you take small aligned actions. Not grand leaps, not frantic efforts, just simple movements in the direction of the life you want. You send one message, you take one step, you complete one task you've been avoiding. These small movements signal to the spiritual law that you are participating in your own expansion. And once intention and action match, the law begins to respond. By the end of the week, something shifts. Not always dramatically, but undeniably. The air around your decisions feels different. The resistance you once felt begins to soften. You catch glimpses of possibility that once seemed hidden. Because when you align with the law aligns with you. And just when you think you understand the full depth of this principle, there is one more realization waiting. One final truth that pulls everything together while opening the path towards something even greater than prosperity itself. At this point, as the pieces fall together, Elias's transformation, the ancient sequence of manifestation, the unveiling of the spiritual law behind prosperity, something becomes unmistakably clear. Getting rich has never been about luck. It has never been about chance or fate. It has always been a matter of alignment. The moment your words, intention, and action fall into harmony, abundance stops feeling like a distant possibility and becomes a natural response from the universe. If you carry only one truth with you from everything we've uncovered, let it be this: your prosperity is not random. It is a law responding to what you speak, how you think, and the direction in which you move. It is activated when you stop contradicting your own future and begin participating consciously in your expansion. You were not designed to chase blessing. You were designed to attract it through alignment. And this is where Jewish wisdom adds something powerful, something both gentle and deeply grounding: the belief that words open worlds. When you say, "Thank God I am growing," you are not offering a wish. You are activating a law. You are placing yourself beneath the flow instead of outside it. You are stepping into a rhythm that has existed since creation began. In moments of uncertainty, ancient tradition doesn't offer fear, it offers blessing. So receive this now as if it were spoken directly into your journey. May you be blessed with clarity in your mind, strength in your steps, and expansion in your path. May the doors meant for you open with ease, and the ones not meant for you close gently. May your hands be guided, your heart be steady, and your words be aligned with the abundance awaiting you. May your life unfold not by chance, but by the law that governs prosperity. But this wisdom isn't meant to stay only with you. Spiritual laws strengthen when they are shared. Someone in your life, perhaps someone you wouldn't expect, is quietly struggling with beliefs that keep them locked out of their own prosperity. Share this message with 3 people who need to understand that wealth is not a gamble, and they are not unlucky. They are simply misaligned, and alignment can be restored. As we close this chapter, a quiet truth lingers in the background, a truth that points beyond the spiritual law of prosperity itself. Because while alignment activates wealth, there is another principle, older, deeper, even more powerful, that multiplies whatever abundance enters your life. A principle waiting to be revealed in the next chapter of this journey.